really it's a tool that allows producers to get their pertinent information that a state vet would want to know into a format and into a system where it can be instantly shared over with the state animal health official to their AgView account. And so it by default forces the standardization of the data going in. But really the system is there and originally designed for that producer to give their permission at the right time, whether the state vet's requesting it, or even prior to an outbreak. They have the ability to share movement information prior to an outbreak for traceability purposes. The goal is for them to be able to do it within the click of a button.
Hello and welcome to the Swine It Podcast Show. I'm Dr. Tara Donovan, your host, and today I have two guests, Dr. Patrick Webb, the Assistant Chief Veterinarian for the National Pork Board, and Dr. Brent Pepin, who is the Director of Swine Health with the National Pork Board. Gentlemen, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about traceability in pork production. And so we're going to cover why traceability is important, what it entails, and some steps to getting it done. But before we begin, I'd like you guys to introduce yourself to the audience for me. And Patrick, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Patrick Webb here at the National Pork Board. And prior to coming here, I had been in food animal production, primarily cow-calf in southwest Iowa, west central Iowa, but then got an opportunity to go to the State Department of Ag here in Iowa and do foreign animal disease planning back in 2001. Did that for about 3 years, and then coming up this month, at the end of the month, I've been at Pork Board for 19 years, and my focus has been on emergency preparedness for foreign and emerging diseases.
Great. Thank you so much. How about you, Brent?
Yeah, so Dr. Brent Pepin, one of the swine health directors here at National Pork Board. I just started with Pork Board in March of this year. Before that, I was in private practice as primarily a swine veterinarian. Did a little bit of dairy and beef here and there as well. And then immediately before here, I worked and still with pigs, but in the biomedical space. So happy to be back with the National Pork. Happy to be working for the National Pork Board.
Biosecurity. One of the best ways to keep animals healthy and protected pig farms across the country is to follow proper biosecurity practices. Biosecurity on pig farms is another way to maintain business continuity and prepare for disease outbreaks. The Pork Checkoff recommends that producers work with their herd veterinarian to write a site-specific enhanced biosecurity plan. Visit securepork.org to learn more about protecting your herd.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that. So let's jump right into our topic today, traceability. So I'll give you both kind of a shot at explaining, in your words what traceability is. But first, this is all about disease preparedness, right? Both endemic and foreign animal disease. And so a topic as a swine veterinarian for many years. I can't express how super important it is. So, Patrick, why don't you jump in and tell us kind of in your words what traceability is?
The pork industry has kind of always been on the forefront, I guess, of traceability. If you go back to the 80s, late 80s, the first rule dropped related to the identification of swine in interstate commerce, understanding the importance of being able to track animals across state lines. And as an animal health official, right, for disease tracebacks, and you can remember back, when you first got out into practice, pseudorabies was still out there, right? It was in commercial pigs. We were bleeding pigs all the time, and there was tracebacks. And so you had to have that type of traceability across state lines, especially in order to do that, to have those records there for your tracebacks. And then, as the industry's evolved over time, record keeping is incredibly important to your business. And that has just kind of evolved into the record-keeping components for the pork industry. So, we have a reputation of having really great traceability, whether that's, tracing out internally for endemic diseases. Hey, this wean to finish barn just broke with Myco. What sow farm supplied to that? And that type of traceability information. I think, where we probably have some gaps is that, our current traceability rules just apply to pigs moving across state line for production. And that doesn't cover the intrastate movements and doesn't cover the movements to harvest. And, that's a big chunk of movements in our industry today that the production system has that data, but our state and federal animal health officials may not have access to that data in real time or near real time. And so that can pose some real challenges if we've got to get back and do a very aggressive trace out because we think we have African swine fever, foot and mouth disease here. So my opinion, and probably where we are the most vulnerable as an industry, is our ability to hand over standardized traceability information to state animal health officials when it's needed for determining quickly where disease is and isn't. And that's the importance of it. As fast as we can do that, the faster we can get back into business if there is a problem, and more importantly, get back into trade because USDA can use that data to regionalize. So.
Right. So as somebody who worked, for a production company, my take was, this is our information to be able to supply in a quick, efficient manner so that we can keep our business going. Right. Granted, if we're not affected. And so, or even if we are, multiple pigs go multiple places in multiple states. So it's the ability for maybe some to continue with business as usual while others are, in a control area or some other reason. So, Brent, how about you? What's your talk on traceability?
Yeah, it's all hard to follow up. Patrick's explanation was very thorough. But the example I always give when I talk is you got to imagine if a sow farm's the first farm to break with a foreign animal disease, we need to quickly identify where all those wean pigs went within the last few weeks. I don't know where the call sows went and if gilts came in and all your semen movements came in. It's that's just one farm. So just kind of emphasize how important keeping good records are and being able to get all that information to state officials when the time is needed.
Right, exactly. So you were a great segue to my next question. It's kind of like what movement information is needed?
When you look at, how a state vet thinks, and since I spent a little bit of time in the state vet's office early in my career, you kind of get that mindset. But when you look at what's the most important thing to trace, right, is your animals. So sending and receiving prim, number of animals in shipment, date of the shipment, any identification that might be on that animal that would assist with the trace out. But if you're a state animal health official, you're right, all right, you showed me where the animals go. That's great. Now show me semen movements if this is a boar stud or if there's semen coming into a sow farm. Okay, I want to see that. Oh, by the way, I might want to see feed because, there's been some implication of spread of ASF in feed, over in China and those countries. And then they're going to say, what about carcass movements? What about rendering? And then what about people moving on and off the farm? And so that's kind of the hierarchy that the state's going to look at. And that's kind of how we kind of prioritize our education and outreach related to traceability is first the animals, then the semen, and let's talk about trucks moving in for feed, and let's talk about rendering and carcass removal. Those are kind of the big four.
Right. And, I remember working in this space a few years ago. And, one of the things that the semen in the feed was something that we've really, in animal health, really never had to track or keep track of before. And one thing that I noted is some of that stuff really is kind of on a piece of paper or in an Excel spreadsheet and not exactly that accessible until you start thinking about, how do I get this? So very good. So that's what needs to be traced, I guess. So how about, how do we track that? How do we get that captured? And what's the streamlined process for that?
Yeah. When I talk to producers, I like to share with them that we're very data rich in the industry, but we're data standardization poor. And so I kind of equate it to if I'm a state vet and I've got 10 farms wrapped up in a disease control area, and I ask them for their movement records for, let's just say very simply, animal and semen, I will probably get records in 10 different formats with multiple column headings that are different that describe, a prem ID. Let's say one farm uses prem ID, the other one uses site ID. The challenge for us becomes how do you take that information, standardize it in a way that it can be visualized for a state vet to make a risk-based decision. And if we don't have that capability as an industry to instantly provide what I'll call that visualization of the data, they're going to hand it over to somebody in the incident command, and it's going to take them weeks to hand jam that information into some system, get it standardized into some system where they can start mapping off of it. And so, USDA's kind of drawn a line in the sand with their, they have these red books, right, that are designed to help us understand the national plan to responding, say, to ASF. Well, they've written it down on paper that if it's in a commercial pig, that's a 72-hour stop movement of all pigs moving across for any purpose, whether it's to harvest or for production. So to me, that's a 72-hour window that the industry has to be able to provide enough information to give confidence that we can start doing movements again. And if we don't, it's another 72 potential. So the most important thing that we can do is get everything kind of aligned from the standpoint of what the data looks like and how you can present that data in one format to all 50 states and to USDA.
Exactly. So the National Pork Board has invested in a tool, right, to help us do this. So and that's called AgView. So let's dig into that a little bit, Patrick.
Yeah, so AgView is a way. It's an opt-in. It's no additional cost to pork producers, to the state animal health officials, and to the other users like we'll probably get into here, the official state agencies and swine management companies. But really, it's a tool that allows producers to get their pertinent information that a state vet would want to know into a format and into a system where it can be instantly shared over with the state animal health official to their AgView account. And so it by default forces the standardization of the data going in. And we've got multiple ways for data to get in there. It can move in through what we call an application programming interface from some of our partners that do that. So like the MetaFarms of the world, we have connections with. FAS, we have connections with. I think we've got 18 different connections that allow premises and movements to go into AgView seamlessly for a producer. But we've got ways for producers to get that data in by hand in the system or through a spreadsheet and mapping spreadsheets. But really the system is there and originally designed for that producer to give their permission at the right time, whether the state vet's requesting it or even prior to an outbreak. They have the ability to share movement information prior to an outbreak for traceability purposes. The goal is for them to be able to do it within the click of a button. And then the state vet can get it minute one of an outbreak instead of waiting for 24 hours or 48 hours for them to assemble all the records and ship them in a spreadsheet or in an email. And then we've also built out the ability for AgView to support the U.S. Swine Health Improvement Plan. It's just another bells and whistle that we've added on that producers, if they want to participate in that program, which is important for people that aren't in the control area, they can participate in that program with just their AgView account that they have. So it's a tool that our board has invested in heavily, but it's achieved the goal of what the board told us to do, give us a tool that we can use in an outbreak to help the industry get back into business, and give us a tool that helps us participate in the U.S. Swine Health Improvement Program. And now we're hearing from our users and our board, we need to make sure that AgView is positioned for any voluntary or mandatory traceability program that may be coming down the pipe in the future. And so that's kind of what our lens is now, is how can we make AgView better from a traceability perspective, make it easier to get data in, mobile friendly, more mobile friendly, those type of things that, we need to continue to build out on AgView.
So you mentioned earlier in discussion the U.S. SHIP program. Let's touch on that just a little bit more, because that's kind of a new program, and recently, my understanding, is going to go forward. So how does this information work with the SHIP program?
Yeah, so the U.S. Swine Health Improvement Plan actually started as a pilot project. Dr. Roger Main up at Iowa State was the primary investigator on that. And the goal was to get this program up and running, basically to be able to provide a site status for ASF or CSF monitoring to participants. And this is something that the poultry industry is very familiar with. They utilize the National Poultry Improvement Plan for something very similar, but related more towards endemic diseases and having site-specific status for those. But this program is actually going to be codified now. USDA is in the process of getting that written up, and it's going to be basically in USDA's hands moving forward. And so this program, if you want to think about what it's intended to do, so if we had a ASF outbreak, let's say on a sow farm here in Iowa, and they put up a control area and wrap up a whole bunch of prems inside of that. The USDA's Red Book, the state response plan, secure pork supply, certified swine sampler collector program, all of those type of things. AgView can apply to that control area to better understand what's going on in the control area and demonstrate where disease is and isn't and where things possibly had spread. Well, there's a whole lot of space outside of a control area, and those are farms that potentially could utilize the Swine Health Improvement Plan to demonstrate that they're monitored for those diseases. So it's an added level of a site-specific certification to give state vets a little more confidence in that the disease has been contained, or at least is not, in an area where you have a lot of these farms that are being monitored. So it really is designed to use the same tools. It's using the same, the same structure for sampling that we would use with the Certified Swine Sampler Collector Program, utilizing secure pork for the biosecurity component, and utilizing AgView as a traceability component, or at least our AgView users are doing it that way. But I kind of, if we go back to the good old days of the Lord of the Rings, you need one ring to unite them all, right? And that's what AgView, we're positioning it, is that with one AgView account, a producer can share their information with the state vet if there's a problem, there's an outbreak. Or they can participate in the U.S. Swine Health Improvement Plan, and they don't have to do anything different. They just have to agree to participate in the program. And if we get down to a potential mandatory traceability program with a reporting requirement, disease reporting requirement within 3 business days, right, of the movement occurring, that one AgView account sets them up for that. So that's really how we're looking at it with a producer. Get one account, get it set up, keep your data current, and that's about all that they can do from a preparedness standpoint and hit all of the different important areas that the industry is moving forward on.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. So in your discussion, you talked just a little bit about, peacetime and foreign animal disease. And so let's dig into a little bit what's crucial for pig farmers to be capturing and putting in, and how do they use AgView during peacetime? So what's in it for them, maybe on a information standpoint?
So yeah, without there being a mandate to use it, right? You have to build in tools that make it either save me time, save me money, or make me money, right? And so the basic capabilities of AgView, right, are around prem IDs and movements of animals. And we also have the ability to capture and deliver, secure pork supply plans. And we do have APIs with a couple of labs, so you can get lab data flowing into AgView. And so a lot of these things that we've built in there would provide back in the day when you were a herd veterinarian, right, or veterinarian for a large production system, basic traceback capabilities. Like I said, if you got a wean to finish barn that was filled from 6 sow farms and you've got mycoplasma in there, you probably don't remember which 6 barns, sow farms filled that. So AgView can provide that, that a level of traceability, and you can visualize that information. We've got a lot of tools in there that you can sort and search, filter now, and just get the data out, or see, just show me this site here and show me the movements in and out of that site over the last 3 weeks. So it allows a level of granularity for the herd veterinarian to be able to do work in AgView for just basic tracing capabilities. For those producers that have allowed, let's say Iowa State does have, we have some AgView users who have added AgView as an affiliate to their diagnostic laboratory submission forms. And so now in one spot in AgView, they can go to a site, they can see movements in and out, they can see laboratory test results related to the site. They can see the secure pork supply plan, or if there's not one there, upload one into the system. So it allows them the opportunity basically to use AgView on a day-to-day or every other day to do the work that they need to do endemic disease traceback. But the other cool thing that we've built in, and you probably remember these, the swine production health plans or commuter agreements, right? Those are, while very, very beneficial to the industry, I bet you can attest to how complicated they were to get 8 people to sign off on a plan for moving pigs out of Oklahoma into Missouri, right? And so we heard from a lot of users that, boy, if you could make that an easy process in AgView, we'd use AgView on the daily, And so, we have a swine production health plan feature in AgView to assist, herd veterinarians in setting these agreements up. And we currently have an agreement set up that was between Ohio and Minnesota that worked out really, really well. And the production system was very happy with it, made their life a lot easier. So, those are the things that we look at as we continue to develop AgView is while we're waiting to see what voluntary or mandatory traceability system might be coming over the horizon, we still have to get people interested in getting into the system. And one of the ways to do that is give me something that I can use every day to make my life easier.
Yeah, that's great news with those commuter herd agreements, and Patrick, because those are cumbersome, especially from multiple states, from multiple different state vets, and everybody sort of had their own way to do it. So no, that's really great. That's something I didn't know that happened. So perfect. So Brent, let's we'll maybe come back to a little bit of the data here in a minute, but one thing I want to ask you is how is the National Pork Board collaborating with the industry in terms of this traceability effort?
Yeah, so to help improve traceability, in particular with call sows and with exhibition swine, National Pork Board, we have an agreement with, we're able to get some USDA funds to help purchase RFID reader equipment. So that's available where we can help purchase equipment for call sow processing plants and sorting stations, and also exhibition swine sites to help increase traceability efforts across all those areas.
Okay.
And that funding is available now through next September.
Patrick, what makes the swine industry different from other species in terms of traceability?
Good question. I wasn't, in the industry or around in the late 80s when the first rule was dropped about identifying, the identification of pigs in interstate commerce. So somewhere there were some forward-thinking pork producers that said, hey, you know what? We need to have a form of traceability here, when we move pigs across state lines for production. And then, you go back to 2001, there was interest in the industry back then of maybe coming to the point of a nationally standardized traceability system for all species that could be implemented by USDA. And so in my time with the National Pork Board, I've always experienced that, pork producers are fairly logical folks and understand the importance of traceability for disease purposes, especially those people that lived through pseudorabies and brucellosis when it was in commercial industry. But you really started to see when we started getting our exports up to 16%. And so when I started at Pork Board, I think it was 16 or 17% exports is where we were at. And that was $23 per head value. Producers started to go, man, we better have our ducks in a row if we ever get one of these outbreaks that's going to stop commerce and trade, because we need to get that $25 back, to make ourselves whole. And fast forward to now, we're sitting just at 28, 29%, $64 per head value. I think producers see, that having a rock solid pre-harvest traceability program that's mandatory is going to pay dividends down the road, especially if we do end up, God forbid, with a ASF or CSF or FMD. It just is an insurance policy. And you don't have to look any further than the EU, who do a really great job of regionalization and very quickly in cases of ASF in member countries. And the reason that they've got mandatory systems that have, a database like AgView that can provide that information almost instantaneously about where pigs moved and haven't moved so they can regionalize again. And so I think we've got a lot of forward-looking producers on our board and a lot of forward-looking producers that are in leadership across other organizations that know that that's something that needs to get done. And I think that's the importance that National Pork Producers Council has put on working with USDA and getting a mandatory program written up and proposed as a rule.
Yeah, I think the pig industry are a little unique because we're very dependent on animal movements. We have to be able to move our weaned pigs. We have to be able to move our gilts. We have to be able to move our market pigs. So we're, as an industry, we're very dependent on moving our animals to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. We kind of learned the hard way, with some of the plant closures during the COVID outbreak of, really how lean we are in terms of being able to have holding space, right? So, I think that was a eye-opening. So we're going to wrap up our talk about traceability, and I'm going to give each of you the opportunity just to share, any last things you have on the topic, something that we didn't cover, or just, stressing something that we did cover in terms of, pleading for this case of how important it is. Brent, why don't you start?
Yeah, I guess I would just add, if you're wondering what you need to trace, anything that can be tied to potential disease break is something you should be tracing at some level. like pig movements is the obvious one, but it also includes, like Patrick touched on before, feed, supplies in and out of your farm. And the one that's probably not traced enough is people movement.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe transport. Patrick, how about you? Any last thoughts for us?
Yeah, for our producers out there, pay attention to where we might be going on this mandatory traceability journey. And there's nothing that prevents us as an industry in achieving what those program standards might look like prior to it actually being dropped as a proposed rule by USDA. And so just encouraging producers that if they haven't taken a look at AgView, get a hold of me here at the National Pork Board. We can get demos set up. We can aid producers in learning how best to get data in and how best to keep data current. Show them some of the bells and whistles and things that we built in that provide the daily value for them or their herd veterinarian when it comes back to disease trace out. Take a good look at AgView. And then in the future, some of the things that we're looking at is, all right, well, if AgView's there and can assist with a foreign animal disease, how can we make it better to assist with endemics? And I'm sure you've heard, there's a lot of chatter in the industry now, hey, maybe we ought to take a shot on goal for PED elimination, or, hey, maybe myco's the next thing, or maybe PRRS, right? Well, we now have a technology in AgView that can assist in these type of things, provided that, we have the opportunity to build out certain tools that would help with programs like that, which I think our board, as we move forward with different task force here to try to determine, what's the next step in endemic disease to improve health and profitability of the industry. How can we piggyback on what good investment's been made in AgView to make it better for the day-to-day for our veterinarians and producers?
Yeah, I think that's great. You mentioned, the last eradication program I was involved in was pseudorabies, and, that was 20 years ago. But it did take about 40 years to actually get done from the beginning of the effort. So it's not an easy task. And we have a lot more sophistication now and tools like AgView that we didn't have. So that's the optimist in me. So very good. Well, thank you guys for being our guest again. This is Dr. Patrick Webb, Dr. Brent Pepin with National Pork Board, talking about all things traceability. But before we end, we have something that we do on our Swine Health podcast show, just to get to know our guests a little bit better. We have kind of three questions that we ask you guys. So before I'm going to let you off the hook, we're going to dig into those.
It's time for our famous three.
An animal nutrition technology company offering innovative products and new applications for the swine industry. The combination of AB Vista enzymes, technical services, and nutrition expertise provides the industry with new opportunities to further improve production efficiencies. Fiber is receiving renewed interest due to its influence on the microbiome, and AB Vista has brought together research experts to discuss the industry's knowledge of fiber functionality and to introduce a Stimbiotic, targeted to improve fiber digestion. To request access, contact NAM at abvista.com. That's NAM at abvista.com.
So the first one is, what's your favorite book or resource? So it doesn't have to be a book. Can be a show, a podcast like Swine Health Podcast. But what's your favorite book or resource in your area of expertise, or something you want to share with our listeners that you think is neat or innovative?
Well, the most book that I finished recently that I thought was really interesting, I think everybody should read, is a book called Super Communicators. Just communication is a science and an art, and that book I thought put it all in perspective really well, and that's something we all have to do in our daily jobs in life. So
absolutely.
So when I first started at Pork Board, we had a pork producer that was heavily involved out of South Dakota named Mr. Jim Leafstead, and he told me about a book that got put together. So USDA back in 1998 sat down with the pork industry, forward-thinking people in the pork industry, USDA in the States, and came up with what's called the Swine Futures Plan. And it was a book about how USDA could better serve the pork industry in the next 20 years. And there's 2 volumes. They're about that thick, right? And he dumped those on my desk. And he said, you need to read these. A lot of work went into that. And it's interesting to go back and read a book from 1998 that talks about the programs that we're trying to implement today to support the industry, something like AgView, something like Swine Health Information Center, these things that are dealing with the next emerging diseases and how, so I find that book fascinating to pick up and read. It's almost like it predicted the future, but it was a big driver on a lot of the stuff that I first did at Pork Board when I got here.
Yeah, and it also shows just, having patience and tenacity, right? Because these things don't happen overnight, right? It seems like the USDA decides to have this program and it's going to happen, by tomorrow, but no, it's years, maybe decades. So, no, very good. I didn't know about that, but that would be interesting to read. So, how about another one outside of ag? So, Brent, I know your communication book may have already been outside of ag. So if you think of something that's, more into what, in agricultural or swine health or health in general, I know your background is you had a bit of a different medical background than maybe some of us. What about something outside of agriculture or outside of vet med?
Well, I guess going back to what I read for specific to my jobs, I depend on PubMed a lot. I really like reading research, published research articles that are out there, and just going to the actual source of the data. But so then back to outside of it, I'm a big reader in general. I use Audible a lot, so I can listen to it. I'm on the road, and I think that's a really great source. And you can always speed up the time so they read to you faster, so you can get through books faster. So
I do the same. Very good. Very good. Patrick, how about you? Anything outside of ag?
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but it's based on, Malcolm Gladwell has a book out that I just purchased called Revenge of the Tipping Point. And I really enjoyed The Tipping Point. That I think was written almost 10 years ago. So I'm excited to get in. I really like the way that he writes and how well researched a lot of what he does. So I'm looking forward to reading that here in the near future.
Great. Yeah, I'll look into that. So the last one is a little bit different, not a book or a resource, but share with us an attribute or characteristic that you feel sets successful professionals apart from others.
One thing that always stands out to me is when when good leaders, like they give credit back to the people that helped them along the way. They don't take the credit; they share the credit. That always really stands out to me.
One of the things here at Pork Board during my time that we've always kind of centered around, whether it was in science and technology or swine health, was doing what's right for the customer. Brent and I work in pork producers pay our salary right through the checkoff, and we pride ourselves on making sure that what we do every day is putting that producer first and being responsive and just making sure that we're doing what's right for them. And I think that can carry over to probably just about any profession is who are you serving and how best can you serve them?
Yeah, absolutely. And we definitely thank you guys for everything you're doing in terms of, traceability and all things animal health at the National Pork Board. So thank you so much for being on our show today and sharing your insight. And hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. You as well.